I just want to say thank you for welcoming me. And today's talk is about freedom and addiction. But freedom is a choice. And like Jim was just reading, it was a conception in the mind of our founding fathers. They conceived of a nation. They conceived of all the details of the Constitution. And today I want to share some of my love of freedom and my love of the Constitution with you. Now, I left some of these little books in the lobby. This is your Constitution. And for all of you to have one. And I think it's important to understand freedom, because without it, I think we have a consciousness of addiction. We have a consciousness of fear, of anxiety. So we'll talk a little more about that. But I wanted to remind you, I got this picture on my refrigerator, and it is a dog that is jumping through the air, and he's airborne. All its feet are off the floor, off the ground. And his tongue is over here, but he looks like he's smiling, or she. And somebody left the gate open. And I like that picture because it reminds me, leave the gate open. Leave the gate open. So I searched for a quote that would kind of describe freedom. And Mark Twain, internet says Mark Twain said this: dance like no one is watching, sing like no one is listening, love like you have never been hurt, and live like it's heaven on earth. That's a pretty good feeling of freedom. So the last couple of weeks have really been filled with a lot of events and a lot to take in. First, well, there was Juneteenth, which is known as Emancipation Day, symbolizing the end of slavery in our country. And then there was the longest day of the year, which was the solstice on June 20th. There was the No Kings Rally, which Robert and I attended. It was also the 250th anniversary of the Army. And since both Robert and I were in the Army, we celebrated in our heart for the Army. So then I heard that California had been occupied by Marines, so I was kind of shocked when I came back. After we landed, and we had landed coming from Honolulu on Tuesday, we were all ready to get off the plane, and they had us sit down again while some particular officers came aboard and handcuffed a small little man and took him off the plane. And I thought, wow, a lot of drama. But, I looked at this whole situation, and then I thought, what can this be any worse? We bombed Iran, and I was like, wow, my sister-in-law is Iranian. So that was kind of a shock to me. But then a particular leader put on Truth Social a little ditty about bomb, Iran. And I went, what? We have to do something to counter this. We have to keep our minds on peace. We have to remember the peace that passes understanding. We have to tone this down. We have to bring us back to a place of love. That's what God is. So some of these activities could nudge people into certain addictions. Don't go there. It's okay to feel feelings of confusion or anxiety. It's okay to feel that and express your emotions, because we're all in the process of awakening to our unity with the divine. Now, freedom, ErnestHolmes said, is basically aligning with that one. First, I have to share a couple of jokes. Karen gave me this one. Karen shared with me a study that she found about women who carry a little extra weight live longer than men who mention it. Now, what do you call an American revolutionary who draws cartoons? A Yankee doodler. And what did Luke Skywalker say on the 4th of July? He said, "May the 4th be with you." Say that a few times. So, now the dictionary says freedom is the power or right to act, speak, or think. And I think as we want without constraint, I think it's important to conceptualize freedom, to bring it about, to manifest it in your life. But first, I wanted to share with you a little history, because before I was a minister, I was a lawyer. And I have a special love for the Constitution. And when Robert and I both became attorneys, we swore allegiance basically to the Constitution, as well as when we were in the military. So a little history to just remind you of how we got here. You know, we are an interesting country. But this week is the 4th of July, Independence Day, and it goes back, kind of way back to July 2nd, 1776, when the Congressional Continental Congress voted in favor of independence. And 2 days later, on the 4th, they all adopted the Declaration of Independence. It was drafted by Thomas Jefferson. And if you haven't had a chance, next time you're in Washington, D.C., go over to the Smithsonian. You see all these drafts, and he crossed it out. And just like a lawyer, you know, he's thinking, well, maybe I should put this in, maybe I should do that. But he drafted it in 17 days, which I think is phenomenal. And it includes 3 parts: the Declaration of Independence, which is your purpose. Why am I writing this? The second part has 7 articles which explain how the government works, like the 3 equally parts of government. And it talks about how money should be spent, other things. And the last part is the Bill of Rights. The first 10 were adopted soon after. But the war with Britain lasted 7 years. And the country, did you know we used to be called British America? Yes. And, but it was changed in 1783 to the United States of America. We were under British monarchy rule for 176 years. It's a long time. So 50 years after the signing, in 1826, both Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, former presidents, died. Now, the last word that Adams said was independence forever. And did you know the motto of the US is freedom forever? Just a little note, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, religion, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble. You have those rights. Exercise them. So I have a quote from George W. Bush. This is interesting. He said, "It's not an accident that the freedom of religion is one of the central freedoms of our Bill of Rights. It is the first freedom of the human soul, the right to speak the words that God places in our mouths." I thought, wow, George W. Bush is saying God speaks through us? Yes, yes. So religious freedom, we're sitting right here enjoying religious freedom. And because, you know, our religion, religious science, really came down through different channels, but it's a totally American religion. It was created, its roots are with Ralph Waldo Emerson, the existentialists in New England, and from there we call it New Thought. But We believe that there's only one. There's one God, there's one mind, there's one cause, there's one intelligence, and we individualize that intelligence. We're born out of intelligence. And an amazing consciousness that created life and all the planets and the entire cosmos. So things like worry and fear and disease and argumentation and frustration, that's not our birthright. That's not who we are. These are abnormal uses of mind. So our mind, all minds can create bondage when you worry, when, Jesus was the one who said, as you think, so shall you be. So if you're worrying all the time, you're awfulizing that's my word, catastrophizing all the time, you're creating more of that. The mind is creative. It's creative organ. So sometimes, why don't you feel free? Why aren't you free? Well, Raymond Charles Barker, he's the writer of the book, The Power of Decision. He said the individual's ability to act intelligently in a universe of intelligence is amazing. We're pretty gifted at being unintelligent. And he goes on to say, unintelligence functioning in human consciousness produces wrong decisions. Okay. As a result, people limit themselves with fighting fear, hate, or financial strain, sickness. It's downright DUMB. So when you know you're one with God, you release these negative thinking. And we were just talking about it earlier when we lit the candles. Attributes of God, that's who we are. Love, life, light, peace, power, beauty, joy. It's all good, it's all God. In the midst of all this turmoil, I think people are turning to some things that are less than perfect. Is anybody here addicted to watching the news? Eating chocolate? Overeating? Playing solitaire? Constantly? Pills? Alcohol? You don't have to raise your hand. Marijuana? Sex? Work? We can overdo all of these issues in life. And it's really interesting. I saw a quote from a doctor. His name is Gerald May. He's a doctor, and he wrote this interesting book called The Dark Night of the Soul. And he said the spiritual significance of addiction is not just that we lose freedom through attachment to things, nor even that things so easily become our ultimate concerns. He said much more important is that we try to fulfill our longing for God through objects of attachment. We want the love. We want the love that is God. You're longing for God in all the wrong places. So come home. Many of you know the story of the prodigal son. He takes his inheritance and he goes off to a foreign land and he spends it, and the Bible says, wild living. Well, we know what that is. Prostitutes, gambling, etc. I don't know if they did drugs in those days, but he loses everything, and he was left with a job. He got a job and it was feeding pigs. Now here's a young Jewish man and he's feeding pigs. So you can tell how low he has fallen. But it says, and he's thinking, wait a minute, even my father's servants eat better than I do. And it says he comes to himself. His consciousness, he comes to that and he thinks, well, wait a minute. He decides to return home. He's not expecting to be welcome, but he's hoping he can be a servant. And what does his father do? what would any parent do? You know, father goes out and welcomes him and gives him a seamless coat. A seamless coat is like the most expensive coat you can give somebody. Gives him a seamless coat, kills the fatted calf, has a celebration, and he welcomes because that love is there. You know, he restores him to this abundance. He restores him to the love. So, the brother's a little unhappy, a little jealous maybe, and the father says, you know, I have always loved you. You've always been here, and whatever I have is yours. There's more than enough, you know? God is unlimited. Our Father is unlimited. You know, we want our children to be free. We want our children to go out in the world. You know, we don't want them to fall on their face, but occasionally they do. And this is freedom, possibility of failure as well as success. So, how do we return home? There are a couple of things we can do. ErnestHolmes has a little saying here from the Science of Mind textbook. He said, we can sit in the shade or move into the sunshine. Sitting in the shadow, we may not really believe that there is any sunshine, but the sun would be there all the time. All the time we're in bondage, real freedom exists. Change your thinking, change your life. So we know that everything originates in the one, comes from the one source, and returns to it again. And Carol said that this morning. And, you know, God's thought makes worlds. Our thought makes our world and peoples it with people that can help us with experiencing a greater evolution, a greater awakening, a greater opening to spirit. So I have a recipe of things that I do, and I was reminded by Johnny yesterday of another one I'd forgotten about, automatic writing. But my recipe, go out in nature. If you're feeling in bondage, go out in nature. And as Ralph Waldo Emerson said, he said, if you want to know God, know nature. You know, take a walk, smell the roses, smell the air, go to the beach, contemplate the universe in a grain of sand. The second thing, meditate. We meditated this morning. You can meditate. You can do a walking meditation at Labyrinth. You know, many churches have labyrinths. And just go within or just be still. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh, a Buddhist priest, said, when you practice mindful breathing or mindful walking, you become free. Free of the past, free of the future, free of your projects, free of your stuff. He didn't say that, but free of your stuff. And he says you become totally alive and present again. The third thing I say is pray. Even if it's only to say thank you, that's enough. Just center yourself and pray. And the fourth thing, well, in addition to automatic writing, give gratitude. You know, you can't stay in a consciousness of confusion when you're giving gratitude. They're a house divided. The mind will not hold on to it. So hold on to what you're grateful for. Like everything you see, everything you hear, everything you touch, all the people in your life, even if they have a different religion, even if they have a different look, even if, you know, they have a different kind of work, you know, you're all, and they are, God in an amazing disguise. Joel Goldsmith, who was a New Thought writer who used to live in Hawaii, he said, never believe for a moment that freedom is dependent on arms or ammunition. Freedom is dependent on an individual's realization of God. To be free of lack, to be free of discord, to be free of inharmony, abide in the truth of God is the only reality. And I've got this quote. She's an amazing woman, a Catholic author who is a mystic, actually. Her name is Judy Conato, and she wrote a book called Radical Amazement. She says, freedom cannot and does not exist in isolation. The freedom of any part is connected to and influences the whole. The freedom of any whole is connected to and influences its parts. Since human beings are but one part of a greater whole, our notions of freedom must go. No longer can the human say to water, I have no need of you, or to the rain, I have no desire for you, because all Earth's resources are intricately woven into a seamless whole. The way we value and take care of each part equals the way we value and take care of ourselves. We're all intertwined, we're all connected. So I wanted to mention a little bit, it's a touchy subject, about immigration. You know, unless you're, and I know you are, Indigenous American Indian, or you are Mexican Indian, you came to this country from someplace else. We're all from another place on the globe. And remember, if you ever go to New York again and see the Statue of Liberty, she says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. My mother's favorite passage in the Bible, and she was a Catholic, and I put this on her headstone. It's from Matthew 25. And it says, I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Naked and you clothed me. Sick and you visited me. I was in prison, you came to me. And those around him said, well, Lord, when did we do all that? Paraphrasing. And this king says, truly I say to you, to the extent that you did it for me, for one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did it for me. So whoever you do it for, again, that's God. That's God's creation. That's God in an amazing disguise. So growing up, well, on a farm in Nebraska, we were pretty poor, but my mother was very creative. She made our clothing. We had a neighbor child who my mother clothed and gave her a pair of shoes and got rid of her lice. My mom was like that. She was always giving. She was a kind person. And when I lived in Hawaii years ago, a lot of parents, can't afford to stay home with their children in the evening. They're working 2 or 3 jobs. And children would knock on the door at night, because when my daughter was little, she would invite the kids over, and they'd all knock on the door and say, hey, auntie, what's for dinner? They'd speak a little pidgin. What's for dinner? And I said, come in, we'll find something for dinner. And I used to welcome all the kids in, sometimes teach reading in the evening too. There are people everywhere that need our help. 2 weeks ago, Robert and I ate at the Spaghetti Factory, which is right at Aloha Tower, right there in Honolulu. And I had leftover steak and spaghetti, the portions were too big. So we walked to the bus stop, and there was a young man, very young, lying on the ground, kind of lying in the shade. And we sat down at the bus stop, and I turned to him and I said, would you like some spaghetti? And he said, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. So I gave him my leftovers, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't have a spoon, but he had bread, so he ate the whole thing, and he thanked me profusely. He was a guy, he seemed just fine, but obviously a little down on his luck, as we say. And, just being able to share is a wonderful thing. That feeling of sharing just brings your heart alive. And I want to say again, freedom equates to love. Freedom to give, freedom to create, freedom to bring people into your life to give. This is God in action. So I don't know what the solutions are. I continue doing what I know. I pray for our lawmakers. I pray for the honoring of life and for the yearning of freedom, which beats in everyone's heart. It's in you, it's in me. Do you remember the story of Jacob in the Old Testament? You know, he's basically the patriarch of Israel. He has 12 children, his 12 sons, anyway, the 12 tribes. He wrestles with the messenger of God, and at the end of the night, he is injured, but he changes his name from Jacob to Israel. But it's interesting. I read the story and I thought, you know, he's wrestling with a messenger of God. You know, I lay awake at night sometimes and I feel like I'm wrestling with my pillow and my cover and I can't get to sleep. You know, and I realize this is a blessing in disguise when, and you know, the messenger of God, all these things are messages, because I think something greater is trying to happen. Something greater always comes. There's chaos before order. And I think that's what's happening. So it's okay to struggle. It's okay to wrestle. We don't say demons, messenger of God. You know, and it's good to be aware of God's presence in all things, but we don't do that all the time. You know, we are like a house divided because sometimes we remember our unity. Sometimes we remember our divinity. And not every day. We have to remind ourselves. So in conclusion, I just want to say we have free will. We have choice. We can choose, you know, we can choose anger and we can choose chaos and we can choose to fight and to bomb and to kill, or we can choose love. We can choose inclusion. We can choose working with people, listening to what other people have to say. It's all good. Again, it's all God. We've all made mistakes. Yeah, nobody's perfect. Don't deny your humanity. Face your negative emotions. Wrestle with the angel, the emissary of God. It's okay to wrestle with it. Live authentically. Yeah, you remember what Rumi said? He said, don't go back to sleep, wake up. No, that's part of it. Is don't go back to sleep. Don't lull yourself to sleep with chocolate, alcohol, drugs, you know, etc. Don't go there. Just be with it. Just look at it, embrace it, and say, it's all God. So free will and self-choice, you know, they appear imperfect and unintelligent, but the divine spark is in each of us and it's intact. It will never be diminished. If we have any sin, which is an archery term, which means you miss the mark, it's because we believe in separation. We're not separate, we're all one. So let go of your judgment. Let go of, just give gratitude. Give gratitude, it's all good. Choose freedom. You're the ocean in a drop. Perfect, whole, complete, and free. So it is. Now I have a reading first. It's called My Prayer for My Country. I want to do that right now. And different people are going to give a paragraph. This is My Prayer for My Country by ErnestHolmes. And he says, believing in the divine destiny of the United States of America and in the preservation of liberty, security, and self-expression for all, I offer this, my prayer for my country. Larry.
I know that divine intelligence governs the destiny of the United States of America, directing the thought and the activity of all who guide its affairs.
I know that success, prosperity, and happiness are the gifts of freedom and the divine heritage of everyone in this country, that they are now operating in the affairs of every individual in this country.
I know that divine guidance enlightens the collective mind of the people of this country, causing it to know that economic security may come to all without the loss of either personal freedom or individual self-expression. I know that no one can believe or be led to believe that personal freedom must be surrendered in order to ensure economic security for all.
The all-knowing mind contains the answer to every problem which confronts this country. I know that every leader in this country is now directed by this all-knowing mind and has the knowledge of a complete solution to every problem. Each is impelled to act upon this knowledge to the end that abundance, security, and peace shall come to all.
Thank you. And I know that this spiritual democracy shall endure, generating to everyone, guaranteeing to everyone in this country personal liberty, happiness, and self-expression. And so it is.
So it is.
Thank you.
you.